Well, Nebraska's coming off of the loss to Illinois, and we've had potentially time to digest it depending on how you look at the situation. And after breaking down the Illinois film, I'm ready to come in here and preview the Nebraska-Purdue game and why I think Nebraska lines up well versus Purdue and why I think this could be a big rebound game for Nebraska. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through Nebraska's offense versus Purdue's defense, see how they match up. Then I'm going to go through Purdue's defense versus Nebraska's offense and see how they match up. I may have said those two the exact same way, but you know what I meant. I'm going to flip-flop the two, see how Nebraska matches up, give some key matchups, etc. But first things first, if you're new here, please consider dropping a like, leaving a comment. Let me know what you think. Drop your score predictions below, and let's go ahead and dive into some of this. Now, first thing I want to start with, right? Let's go ahead and dive through a couple of the numbers here. And one of the big things that stood out to me in terms of numbers wise is Nebraska is tied for 12th in college football in terms of second quarter points scored. Purdue is 126th in second quarter points allowed. Take that for what you will. Nebraska, of course, struggles to score in the second half. We'll see how that goes in this game, depending on if Nebraska is in control. One of the key things that I think stand out from Purdue's last game against Oregon State, where they lost in that game, 2 of 9 on third down. Okay. 2 of 9 on third down, not going to be good, not going to get them off the field. What Illinois did well against Nebraska and in sustaining drive is converting on third down. Okay. So let's go ahead and dive into first the Purdue defense. Okay. We're going to do Purdue defense versus Nebraska's offense. So Purdue defense, 25.7 points per games allowed. Now, they had a shutout earlier this season against a much inferior opponent, so that brings it down. They were, of course, they lost to Oregon State last week and lost by multiple scores. And in that game, they gave up 354 yards rushing, 269 yards per game given up on the season, 10 touchdowns given up on the ground. The pass defense is much better. However, teams have played with the lead a lot of instances and haven't had to pass the ball a ton. 123 yards per game passing allowed, 2 touchdowns allowed. One thing I noticed when watching Purdue's defense back, there's not a lot of team speed there, right? They're not a defense that's going to really be able to get to the outsides quickly. So this is where Nebraska's perimeter game needs to really step up and take advantage of the lack of speed over on Purdue's defense. Illinois had a very good defense in terms of everybody staying where they need to be, schematically wise, and just did a good job of doing their job, keeping their eyes where they need to and staying at home and making plays. They had a lot of good individual performances, but across the board, they had a great team performance defensively. Purdue struggles in terms of getting out of position, their eyes and their bodies out of position. Not only that, again, struggle with team speed. It's going to be a struggle on that end if Nebraska can really get playmakers going in space, get stuff going to the edges, and really open up that deep passing game as well, and attack their defensive line. Again, they gave up 269 yards per game rushing, 354 last year. This could be a good get-right game for the running back room after a tough day at the office against Illinois. Looking at Purdue defense key players, we got Kydron Jenkins, who's number 4. He's the linebacker over there, 11 tackles on the season, 3.5 sacks. He's a big part of what they do. He's going to be all over the field again, but he's also a guy who really struggles in terms of his overall speed. But he will be able to, put some pressure on the passer sometimes, and he will be able to make plays. Will Helt coming out number 15, the defensive end, 2.5 sacks on the season for him and 8 tackles. So Will Helt over there on the defensive side of the ball. Those are the 2 biggest pressure guys in terms of getting pressure on the quarterback. And then you have Antonio Stevens, who's a safety, but he likes to play a little bit in the box / slot, like a nickel type of look. So Antonio Stevens will be back there, and I only point him out because he is a safety. However, he's not typically the single high safety that you will see out there for them. Now, let's move over to Nebraska offense and how they match up. Nebraska's offense, 31.5 points per game on the season so far. 140 yards per game rushing and 7 rushing touchdowns. Now 48 yards rushing against Illinois total. Now 261.5 yards per the game through the air. And by the way, that rushing number includes sacks. So 261.5 yards per game through the air for Nebraska's offense. 100th in penalties per play, 0.06 penalties per play. The discipline has to get cleaned up. I know some of the calls have been what they are, but still the discipline does need to clean up on Nebraska's end offensively. For them to win this game, all they have to do is execute and not shoot themselves in the foot. Again, a Purdue defense that has forced 0 turnovers on the season. So they're not a very opportunistic defense. Illinois was very opportunistic. Purdue's defense going to struggle to make things happen. They're also going to struggle to stop the ball. They are a leaky defense, 95th in the nation in total defense, and they will allow yards. Nebraska needs to get better in the red zone, though. Nebraska needs to start scoring more touchdowns when it comes to the red zone, and this is a game they can do that in. Now, let's go ahead and look at Nebraska's defense and how they match up versus Purdue's offense. So Nebraska's defense is at 12.8 points per game allowed, 192.5 through the yards per game allowed, 94 rushing yards per game allowed, no touchdowns allowed on the ground. Not 192.5 was the passing yards per game, 286 yards per game allowed for Nebraska's defense. So overall, solid performance. And just answering some of the questions, I went through a full film study yesterday on Tuesday's live stream, breaking down the all-22 film on what I saw with Nebraska's defense. Now, what I did see from Nebraska's defense in terms of, what happened versus Illinois, it was a lot of guys, it was conceptual from Illinois. They were throwing a lot of out routes, a lot of hitches, a lot of quick hitting stuff. They were moving the pocket with Altmaier, but not only that, they were keeping the linebackers on their heels. They did a good job of keeping the linebackers on their heels, and they did that by a lot of motions. And they, off of those motions, they would bring guys out. 85, for instance, he leaked out on that touchdown. Right before he leaked out on that touchdown, they ran 3 plays in that 5-play series on that side of the 50 that involved 85. One of them was a pass where they passed it to somebody else. That play was called back for penalty. They had one where they were blocking. They had another one where he leaked out on the pass, and they threw it to them in the end zone. So that was a setup play. A lot of what Illinois did was set up. As the game went along, Illinois didn't show much, but they showed a lot of the schemes that they wanted to do, and then they waited until the situations arose where they needed to use the plays off of those schemes that were set up. And that's what they did a good job of, is keeping Nebraska on their heels. Nebraska was unable to pin their ears back the way they normally do, especially to stop the run. And that was evident in the way that the defense ended up playing. They picked on the fact that Nebraska's down Tommy Hill and Bly Hill. Sierra Wright stepped up and played very well, though, out there. So be aware, Sierra Wright is really stepping in and coming into his own, which is going to be huge for Nebraska's defense. We'll see if Tommy Hill plays this weekend. Of course, plantar fasciitis is the issue. Now let's move over to Purdue's offense. Purdue's offense, 25.7 points per game, 5 turnovers on offense. Again, +5 or -5 in the turnover margin for Purdue. 171 passing yards per game, which is 110th in the country. 183 rushing yards per game. So, overall, Purdue's offense is going to be a running offense, even though they are a West Coast style of offense, supposedly. Now, the quarterback-wise, Hudson Card. Now, Hudson Card is a guy who came out, lit it up week 1, and he's very experienced. 5 seasons, I believe this is only his second starter as starting quarterback. 63% completion percentage, 453 yards. 6.9 per attempt, which is pretty low, 6 touchdowns to 3 interceptions. And I think he's had under a 50% completion percentage in his last 2 games. So take that for what you will. Oregon State 7 for 17 with 56 yards passing, 41% completion percentage, and only 3.3 yards per pass, which is abysmally low. Now there's opportunities for Purdue's offense in the rush game. Devin Mockabee, 36 carries, 276 yards, and 6.1 per carry for Devin Mockabee. So that is a guy Nebraska's going to have to really key out on. Nebraska's defense is going to have to be a lot better at stopping the run, but without the element of the pass for Purdue's offense, and they may change things up. Maybe they'll try to go with a little bit more tempo. Maybe they'll try to get some quick hitting stuff, kind of like Illinois did, to the perimeter to set up the kind of that middle rushing game. But I don't know if necessarily Purdue's offense has the horses to be able to stress Nebraska's defense enough, if at all. Now, one thing I will say, Purdue's offense, they are going to be missing Jamal Edrine. He is one of their top receivers, and he's going to be out this week, most likely. I think he's out 3 to 4 weeks, got injured in the last game, which really, really hurt Purdue's passing game, which you alluded to why they had 56 yards and one interception thrown on 7 of those. It's 7 for 17 with 1 interception thrown. Not a good day at the office at all. 15.2 QBR and 11.2 QBR the week prior for Hudson Card. This should be an offense that Nebraska's defense will get right against, be able to pin their ears back, get some pressure on him, and hopefully this defense can get a little bit of their swagger back. One of the biggest playmakers that I saw in Nebraska's defense last week versus Illinois, and watching the film, was, of course, Bullock. As we know, he made multiple plays, but not only that, there were a lot of under-the-radar plays that he had where he made up for issues in other areas where players were out of position. And that is one of the things, too, is trusting each other and having each other's back and being in position to trust the guy next to you, okay? Now, let's go ahead, and I'm going to bring up some of just the PFF rankings here to give you an idea of what they are expecting in terms of looking at the matchup here. And so I'm going to bring this up for you. And here what you'll see is we have the Nebraska offense versus the Purdue defense. Now, what I was talking about earlier, some of the guys I was talking about, number 4 right here, Jenkins, the linebacker, he's going to be a player to watch. Stevens, this is the strong safety. He's going to be kind of lined up in the box, the slot. You're going to see him a lot in the slot. And then Thieneman up here, he's going to be the single high safety that they use a lot. We got Jamal Banks, Janiron Bonner, Isaiah Nair on the outsides. Raiola coming in at 82.3 passing grade. Dowdell, 71.6 rushing grade. And you can see our offensive line numbers there. Ben Hart, 69.2. Latovsky, 64.2. Scott, 63.5. Evan Jenkins, 65.2. And Corcoran, 62.1. One of the things that I will say about Nebraska's offensive line last week, there were a few lapses whenever we had this left side with Evans Jenkins and Gunnar Gatula. Okay, so Gunnar Gatula is going to really have to, those two are going to have to work together because there were some matchup issues that arose late in the game that caused some plays to happen. So that left side of the line is going to be a big part of this game. And they're, again, this is a team where they're going to have to put a good offensive line performance together to really prove their mettle here. Moving over to looking at Purdue's offense versus Nebraska's defense here, Hudson Card, you see as a pretty good PFF rating, but of course these ratings are, take them for what you will. Certain games will prop those numbers up, but 78.7 there for Hudson Card. We got Rigby outside, 56.4. Jamal Edrine in the slot, that's going to be the guy there without, 67.6. We have Claire over here, 71.2, and Tibbs at 55. Now, we'll say the left side of the Purdue offensive line leaves a lot to be desired as well. The right side here looks to hold up a lot better. I did like what I saw from number 55 at Wingfield, especially. He looks very, very good on the right side of the line. But again, just not a complete line unit, which causes there to be a lot of leaks and a lot of issues in terms of that. And then, of course, Devin Mockabee, the big time at running back right there. Moving over to the summary of what they expect from the Nebraska-Purdue game. Overall, according to PFF team metrics, Nebraska's 57th overall to 84th for Purdue. Defensively, 39th to 109th in terms of total defense. Power ranking offense, 46th and to 67th. Strength of schedule, 35th for Purdue, 103rd for Nebraska. Now we're looking at the balance here. Nebraska's percentage of run plays, 45.9%, 54% passing. Of course, that was a lot more passing last week against Illinois. 46% for Purdue to 53% passing. So very similar in terms of that. Efficiency per run, you see right here, very close. Efficiency per pass, extremely wide margin there. 0.33 for Purdue, 0.20 for Nebraska. That is a huge discrepancy there. Now looking over at the team comparison for passing, clean pocket, 110.4. Purdue's 120.8. Under pressure, 107.2. Purdue 5.6. Okay, so that is going to be big right there. Getting pressure on the quarterback basically will kill Purdue's passing attack. Big time throw percentage, 3.95% for Nebraska, 4.35% for Purdue. Take that percentage for what you will. It is an offense that passes the ball significantly less, so that percentage is what it is based on the percentage of throws. Turnover worthy play percentage, 1.97% for Nebraska, 2.17% for Purdue. You see right here the betting odds. They got Purdue +10 and Purdue money line plus 300. You can see PFF wants to take Purdue plus the 10. I am going to take Nebraska -10 in this game. Again, I think Nebraska matches up very well in a lot of areas in terms of how that goes. We're going to see a little bit more here in terms of the spread. Um, you know, cover probability again doesn't lean towards Nebraska, but I'm giving Nebraska. Again, matchup wise, what I've saw on film, I just think Nebraska wins this game by multiple scores. I'm going to give my score prediction right here in just a little bit, but the market right now, win probability has Nebraska at 72.8%, giving Purdue a 27.2% chance. Very difficult for Purdue to win this game. I think it's going to take a complete and utter meltdown by Nebraska for Purdue to hold on and win this game. And so far, again, what I saw for Nebraska offensively, looking at offensively last week, they, the scheme was, I think the scheme overall, I think what Nebraska did individually in terms of plays, go and drives go was very successful. But I think some of the strategic plays and how they handled the entirety of the game plan was what left a lot to be desired. Late there in the third quarter, I think it was where they had that quick, scoring drive where they, 4 or 5 plays marched down the field and scored. And I think that allowed Nebraska's defense to get put on the field early. Again, I'm not upset about scoring, but allowed Nebraska's defense to get back on the field early, didn't give them a lot of rest. And I think Nebraska's defense kind of wore down as the game went along as well. So a lot of things there. Purdue isn't a team that, has the ball much in terms of time of possession. I think they're 38% in terms of time of possession for them. Nebraska is over 50%. So that's going to be something Nebraska is going to want to do, is control the ball. But again, Nebraska is going to win this game. I think Nebraska wins this game. I'm going to say 37. I'll give Nebraska 37. Purdue, I'll give, let's say Purdue, I'll give Purdue 10 to 13 points. So let's say 37-13, Nebraska wins this game. That is my final prediction based on what I've seen so far. And yeah, that being said, go ahead and lay your bets if it's legal where you are. And if you want to come back to this video, if I'm wrong and tell me I'm wrong, go ahead. I'm putting myself out there, but hopefully you enjoyed this preview. And like I said, if you do, please consider dropping a like, drop a comment, leave your score predictions below. And with that being said, I will see you in the next video.